On today's episode, I celebrate Pascal Siakam getting voted into the All-Star game. I talk about some of the tough decisions that are going to have to be made about some of the young players in our rotation. And to top it all off at the end, I talk about a under the radar type of trade for a center that could potentially be our starting center for the future and beyond. All coming up next on the Pacer Pulse podcast. What is up, Pacer Nation? Welcome to the Pacer Pulse podcast, the heartbeat of Indiana basketball. I'm your host, Sean Trader. And guys, I wanted to start this off by celebrating Pascal Siakam getting voted into the All-Star game. We knew it'd be close. We knew that with the record, it just wasn't for sure. I don't know the past history on the voting on this, but I do wonder when the last time like an All-Star got voted in that was like this bad, like on this bad of a team. So I know like that usually factors into a lot of the voting, especially for the reserves, but I think a lot of the coaches in the league, whoever else, the media, they all understood how impactful Siakam has been this year for the Pacers and how I think a lot of this has just not been his fault. Hasn't really been a lot of the team's fault with all the injuries we have endured over this whole entire season. How many 10-day contract guys we had in like at the beginning of this year. It's almost incredible to go back and look on and to see. So I think that they looked at the numbers, they saw like just how impactful he has been and how awesome and like consistent he has been. And not even counting like several of the game winners that he's hit throughout this season. Even though we only have 13 wins, we would be really bad without Siakam. So, and I think even TJ McConnell said this after one of the post games, after one game, I think it was. He was saying how if we didn't have Pascal Siakam, we probably would only win like one game. And maybe that's extreme, but that's how far TJ went with it. So I thought that was pretty eye-opening. I know he's obviously vouching for one of his guys, but I don't think he's that wrong. I think we would be easily the worst team in the league without Siakam by far. I mean, right now, I think today we have the fourth worst record in the NBA, and that's mostly thanks to Siakam and his consistent dominant play. And just looking back on that trade, guys, it's going to have to go down as one of the best trades in NBA Pacers history. Obviously, like the Halliburton trade tops it, but like to get a guy that has made the All-Star team in his first two full seasons with us, because I know we traded him for halfway into that one season, but then that season we made the conference finals, then we make the finals with him the next year, make it to Game 7, literally the highest peak in our franchise history. All thanks to like obviously Halliburton, but like Siakam equally as much. Would have never made it there without him. And then this year, what he's been doing, it's incredible, guys. And he's actually, I saw this earlier on one of Tony East's articles that he wrote about Siakam making the All-Star game, where he said that Siakam is the 8th player in NBA or in the Pacers history, to be named an All-Star multiple times. Just think about that, guys. The 8th player in our team history. That already there like cements him as one of the best Pacers of all time. You could easily say top 10 if you're basing it off that alone. I'm not trying to be like a homer and like be so in the moment. Obviously, he hasn't been here like too long, but if we're going off pure production and what he's done so far with this team, yeah, I think there's almost no question. And I don't think there's many fans that would argue against that either, because he's just been that great. He's been that great. He's been that amazing. And he's just been such a great character guy too for our team. And you constantly hear like a lot of the praise too about how he's been this year with, even with the bad record. He's even like held himself accountable in that way in terms of just not letting the losing and all that affect him and rub off on his teammates because he knows he has to lead by example and be that leader. And he's even said himself he's never been like a vocal leader that he likes to show with his actions and whatnot, but he's really stepping into that role more so than he ever has. So just the fact that he's willing to step into that role for this team and be that main vocal leader for this team and really lead this team in a positive way, even amidst this terrible season that we've had. But also, Tony covered some other stats here in his article that I wanted to touch on because it just paints a picture as like why Siakam should have been an All-Star for sure, even amidst like the bad record. But it said here, Siakam this year, he's averaging 23.8 points, 6.9 rebounds, and 3.9 assists per game. Rounding all those stats down to the nearest half point, the only players achieving those marks through the date that All-Stars were named are Siakam, Nikola Jokic, Luka Doncic, Denny Advia, Giannis Antetokounmpo, Jaylen Brown, and Joel Embiid. Guys, that is incredible company to be with. I mean, 2 or 3 of those guys are MVP candidates. I mean, Jokic, before he got hurt, I don't even know if he's still eligible or not. I haven't checked that. But Luka, Nikola, I mean, even Denny Avdia has been amazing. Giannis, of course, has been amazing this year. Jaylen Brown. So just the fact that he's in the same breath as those guys in any sort of statistical category is just absolutely incredible. And if you guys have heard any of my past podcasts, I really like to use Cleaning the Glass. It's an advanced stat site for the NBA. I guess so. Like apparently some other big time NBA media people use it as well every now and then. But it's just I like it because it takes out all the garbage time. It takes out all like the bad offensive heaves at the end of a shot or at the end of like the clock at the end of quarters. It takes a lot of the meaningless stats out of games, and it really just tries to paint the best picture in terms of all the winning time, I guess you would say, all the meaningful minutes in a basketball game. It uses those minutes, and it really helps paint a picture of how effective a player has been. So this year, whenever you go off his advanced on-off numbers, I won't try to get too in the weeds. That's why I even had a little bit of help trying to simplify this so it sounds digestible, that you can actually understand what's being said, I guess, with some of these numbers. But Siakam, he has a point differential this year of a plus 14.6, which is in the 98th percentile. So essentially, when Siakam is on the floor, Indiana outscores opponents by 14.6 points per 100 possessions. And like I said, that is 98th percentile in the league. That is, according to that number, that is all NBA star level impact, just off that number alone. So essentially, when he's not on the court, we are not that good. I mean, we're literally we're outscoring teams by 15 points when he's on the court, essentially. That is absolutely incredible. And guys, don't take this for like gospel. I know with all stats, none of them are just going to paint the complete picture. There's always going to be some sort of flaws in it. But I do think that it does paint a pretty good picture, that because especially considering the type of lineup Siakam was playing with throughout the entire year, it's not like he's just playing with just the best guys out on the court all the time. He's playing with like bench units a lot. He was playing with a lot of 10-day guys a lot of the year too. So that's why I think these numbers even stand out even more, considering the context of all the different types of lineups Siakam's played with this year. So there's also another stat in the Cleaning the Glass, if you look on there, the on-offs, that expected win shares. He's literally a plus 25 in that category. So that pretty much means, based on his on-court impact alone, Siakam is worth about 25 wins. This strips out luck and teammates off the court. It takes out a lot of that stuff. But that it's massive, and it's usually only numbers you see from star players or players driving elite lineups. So I think Siakam definitely fits both of those. He's a star player, and obviously the lineups are elite whenever he's out there. And that just goes to show like how impactful he is. And then his offensive impact. So essentially, Indiana's offense is 12.3 points better whenever he's on the court. So that just encompasses his on the offensive side of the floor. So it's just showing that it's not just scoring. We have better ball movement. We have better transition points, decision making out there. And we're just not stalling on possessions as much when Siakam's on the court. And then the effective field goal percentage of the team offensively, we are 5 percentage points better, which is also 98th percentile in the league. And also the points off 100 possessions is 98th percentile. So top of the league. But we get way better shots when he's on the court, more rim pressure, cleaner kickouts, better spacing and flow whenever he's on the court. And then just offensively, turnovers wise, it's negative 3%. So that's in the top 98 percentile as well. So we're turning it over significantly less when he's on the court, is essentially what that means. He stabilizes the offense. He makes quick reads. He doesn't force bad possessions. Just elite usage. Then the offensive rebounding, we're in the 85th percentile because we know Siakam this year has been very good on the offensive glass. He's like a plus 3.4 whenever he's on the court for the team. So we just definitely get more offensive rebounds when he's out on the court, which is just extra possessions. So obviously that's very beneficial to any sort of team. And then to top all this off, his defensive impact. So his points per 100 possessions he gives up to the other team, it's negative 2.4, which is in the 67th percentile. So definitely a very high impactful defender. Obviously not top of the league, but he's way above just average. So it's not defensive player of the year stuff, but he clearly is a positive on defensive end. So with matchups, minutes versus the starters, switch heavy schemes, he's obviously been very effective in those regards this year. And then the opponent's field goal percentage against us is negative 1.3%, which is in the 69th percentile. So essentially that reflects like his versatility, help defense, transition defense, just not gambling, playing solid defense. So basically, this is why he was voted an all-star, I think, in my opinion. Not just based off those numbers alone, but a lot of those numbers, like I said, paint the broader picture of why he was voted an all-star. So I think that's why you're not going to see any argument from anybody really in the media. Maybe some will say, oh, he's on one of the worst teams in the NBA, but you're going to get a lot of pushback, I'm sure, from anyone that opposes that view, as they rightfully should, because he's just been that incredible. So I think that's just some numbers I wanted to throw out there. It's just to show that how impactful he's been this year, why he deserved to be an all-star this year. And like I said, I think that was like almost, I don't want to say the number one mission of this season, of course. You could tell, especially with our winning lately, that we really have made it a priority to like make sure he makes the all-star team, or at least wanted to reward him in that way. So I think that's pretty cool on the team's part, even though I think for the betterment of the long haul, we would need to start losing games more. We can't be winning meaningless games. As I talked about with Tony East a little bit on my last podcast, if you guys haven't heard that, we talked about the trade deadline a lot, so I suggest go checking that out too. But we kind of mentioned how, yeah, there's only 35 games left or so in the NBA this season, and he even said, which I thought was very telling, that we could literally go on a 20-game win streak, and we still would barely catch up to the Atlanta Hawks, who are like in 10th at the time we recorded that podcast. So think about that, guys. It would take a 20-win streak just to even get to like the play-in spot. So it's a lost season, guys. It's over, but I think we at least accomplished this big goal, as in getting Siakam into the All-Star game, because he does deserve it. And now, hopefully, after the All-Star game, we can kind of start resting him more, giving him some more time off, really getting him ready for next season, for when Halliburton comes back when we're really playing competitive basketball again, hopefully. So that's really what we hope the direction goes as a franchise. And I know I'm not alone in this, Pacer Nation. I know Tony's not either. I'm not saying he's actually saying tank, but he's definitely saying we need to prioritize the pick as well. And I completely agree. That's really what the focus should be moving forward. Prioritizing that pick and getting more development into Johnny Furphy and Jarace Walker, some of those guys. And that's kind of my point I wanted to lead into next, guys. I wanted to talk about some of the issues, or I would say problems, that we're going to need to solve about some of the young guys in this rotation moving forward. So we already know about the rumors with Bennedict Mathurin, right? About him possibly being traded, or it could be a foregone conclusion that he's going to get traded. So that's to be determined what's going to happen with Bennedict Mathurin. But the fact that that's been such a topic of debate and discussion clearly shows that maybe we're being active in trying to trade him because maybe we don't want to extend him. We have a lot of our rotation set almost, so maybe they just see that as an opportunity to trade for a center too. But leading into that, we see that scenario playing out with Ben Mathurin here. And I wanted to talk about with Furphy and Jarace Walker specifically, and I'll mention Shepherd briefly just because he's kind of part of this, but he obviously plays a different position than those guys. Those guys can play like the 3-4 a lot more than Ben Shepherd can, of course. Shepherd's pretty much strictly a 2, I would say. Maybe certain lineups a 3, but I think you're really pushing it in that regard. So I do think no matter what, Shepherd's just kind of on the outside looking in, guys. And I think that's going to be an issue as well, because he's going to end up, I think starting next year, his salary might go up to like $5 million per year. I could be wrong, but that's kind of getting to be where you're kind of making an impact on the cap a little bit more. And I know that doesn't sound like a lot of money, and maybe it's okay if he's like your 11th or 12th man, but as this rotation kind of shakes out, guys, I think he's clearly the odd man out right now. And then that's why I think I really wanted to focus on Jarace and Furphy in this discussion, because I really think those two guys are going to be battling for that 10th man spot next year. So I wanted to dive into like what's the rotation going to look like. So I wanted to paint a broader picture here as to why I think this is an important topic right now, and how maybe the rest of this season kind of helps paint the picture on what we can possibly do going into the offseason, what decisions we need to make. So imagine next year, right, after this season, We're going to have Halliburton back. Let's say we have our original starting five of like Halliburton, Nembhard, Nesmith, Siakam, and then let's say, so hypothetically, I'll go ahead and say, let's say we trade Ben Mathurin for a starting center. So say we trade Mathurin, we get our starting center, so that's who in that center spot. So now I wanted to take a picture of what the bench unit is going to look like next year. So obviously we're going to have Obi Toppin back, who plays the 4, of course, and 5 some. So he's going to be playing between those positions. We got TJ McConnell still. So that's 2 guys off the bench for you already. We're going to have a top 5 pick at least. Hopefully top 3, guys. Let's pray about that, Pacer Nation. Please pray that we do get a top 3 pick. And I think that's in the cards because I think Alex Golden brought it up on his podcast here recently that Kevin Pritchard was at the Kansas BYU game where the Bonta and Peterson were facing off. So maybe just a little foreshadowing there. I don't know, but I don't think he's going there for no reason. I know he went to Kansas and whatnot. Kevin Pritchard did. So maybe that's why too, but I don't think that's just a coincidence. I think we know what our plans are. I think we're going to end up not like kind of tanking out the rest of the year, let's just say. So we're bringing in a top 3 or 4 pick, and that could be anywhere from a small forward, power forward, a guard like Peterson. So with that in mind too, that's your 3rd rotation spot because you're not going to play a top 4 pick. I mean, that's just unheard of. That would be a detriment to this franchise as a whole. So that's not going to happen. So that's 3 rotation spots off the bench already. And then we have J Huff as the backup 5, so that's 4. So if you're counting all that, Pacer Nation, that leaves 1 rotation spot out of like a 10-man rotation. So obviously, being the 11th or 12th man, when injuries happen, you're going to play. That always happens throughout seasons. So that's where Shepard maybe comes in a little bit, but that's why I think this talk about Johnny Furphy and Jarace Walker really means a lot for the rest of this season and for why we need to see their development the rest of this season. I wouldn't even be surprised too, guys, if we trade Jarace at the deadline here as well. Maybe we wait till the offseason to give him more time to play and build on his performance that he's been playing better lately, at least, like the past month. But I don't think that shapes their view in terms of, we need to keep him, especially keep him now because of 1 good month of play, which I do want to commend him for that. He's improved since the beginning of this season, but come on, guys. Like, we can't just say 1 month out of his entire career is what's going to dictate if this guy's still on the team or not. So I think they got to still look at that, but I think they can at least kick that can down the road. And one thing I wanted to bring up, guys, because we're kind of seeing this now with Mathurin, as we're facing his restricted free agency. He's looking for a bigger payday, of course, and he deserves it. So the Pacers obviously are kind of hesitant, it seems like, if all the reports are true. And maybe if they thought they were never going to pay him at all, which I'm a big Mathurin supporter, guys. I want to keep Mathurin. That's what I would want to do. So I'm just going off the reporting and what's kind of being thrown out there. So this is by no means by what I want to do, but essentially if they've always thought like maybe we would not want to re-sign him. Clearly he was crucial for our finals run. He had huge games in the finals that got us to Game 7 as well. He was clearly needed. But maybe they should have thought about that before and maybe tried trading him at the peak of his value, maybe in this past offseason. If we really, especially once a Miles Turner thing went down, where maybe they should have been more aggressive about trying to find centers on the market. Maybe at that time it was too late. I don't know exactly, guys. I could be wrong, but I think they should have been more aggressive then if they really thought, hey, we don't really think we can bring back Mathurin. I get they wanted to see how he performed this year. I just don't know like how much they're going to see. How much are they really going to learn any more so than they already knew, I guess, is what I would say. So I think that's just where I wanted to lead into my point with Jarace here. So after next season, guys, so I'm thinking far ahead. After the 2026-27 season, Jarace Walker is going to be a restricted free agent. So we could essentially face this whole entire same situation with Jarace that we are with Ben, which I don't think that Jarace is anywhere close to the same level as player as Ben overall, especially body of work-wise, right? Jarace has not performed at the level Ben has. He's not going to get paid that same amount of money, but he's definitely going to get paid more than probably what you want to pay a 10th man on your team, if you get what I'm saying. So it's just, that's why I really wanted to talk about it today. Amidst his great performances he's had the past month or so, he's really helped turn the season around so far. Let's see if he can maintain that for the next couple months, considering the first 3 months were pretty bad. So you got to see that for a sustained amount of time, but I think that's also why I believe they'll keep him past the trade deadline because they know his value is pretty bad right now. All he can do is at least improve his trade value. Maybe you decide on if you think he's worth keeping at that point. You kind of know where your draft pick's going to be at that point, at least too. So maybe you get more clarity on that, depending on what you do with Matherin. If we already did trade him for a center at that point, so you kind of see what I'm saying, guys. That 10th spot is really going to come down to Furphy or Walker, in my opinion. So we know how much Rick loves Furphy. We see how much he's improving. Clearly, he needs more developmental time, of course, because he's not the perfect player. No one's saying that he's going to be an all-star player, nothing like that. I just think that he can be a guy that can play in a playoff rotation. On a 10-man playoff rotation, I think Furphy could easily be in a rotation spot, if you get what I'm saying. So, and we've seen how teams played deeper into their benches, even throughout the playoffs. We did it all playoffs last year, guys. So, to say that we won't play 10 guys at some point, yeah, we're going to play 10 guys for maybe the first 2 or 3 rounds until we get to the finals. And in certain games, we'll stick to 8, whatever it is. But we saw that last year, how it is essential that you do have a deep roster. So I know this is a good problem to have, but I do think it's something that you have to look at. With Jarace hitting for restricted free agency after the next season, do they maybe get ahead of it? They let him build up his value the rest of this year, trade him in the offseason, maybe not even necessarily get a player back, but just get some draft capital. Maybe you get, hopefully at best, you can get like a late first-round pick if you're really being, I don't know what you want to call it, if you really are being optimistic about it. Maybe you can get a late first, a couple seconds even, but maybe some future assets to use in a future move, or just to have in the future in our back pocket for whatever needs that could possibly pop up. Eventually, we're going to have to figure out the TJ spot because he is going to be 35 next year, guys. So you don't know when Father Time's going to hit, especially with how TJ plays. He's a quick burst type of player where he just plays so hard and so fast, like in the time that he plays. You don't know if that type of player is going to really age too well. And I love TJ. Obviously, he's going to stay on this team till he retires. So maybe they use some of those assets to kind of figure out the backup point guard situation eventually. So that's just kind of where my mind's going with this, guys, where I think that the rest of this season is going to tell a lot between those Johnny Furphy and Walker. And I do think right now, if they had to decide, they're going to let Walker try to build up his value and then trade him in the offseason. So that's just where I think on it. And Johnny Furphy, for a 10th man, he's making $3 million per year, guys, right now. So just think if Jarace, he's, like I said, he's making 7 right now. He's going to be extension eligible, restricted free agent. Are you going to want to pay him? I don't know what Jarace could be worth necessarily, 10 to 15, somewhere in that range, maybe. And for a 10th man, that's pretty pricey for a 10th man, in my opinion. So I think the Pacers are going to be thinking ahead on this, guys. And we know that they think ahead on these things to a certain extent. And maybe, depending on what happens with Matherin, they're going to learn from this situation and maybe try to get out ahead of it a lot sooner than they did maybe in this situation. So I think that's just something we have to really think about, guys. We have to really keep in the back of our minds. And it's something I just wanted to bring up on today's podcast to get us marinating on maybe something to watch for the rest of the season too, so especially since after this All-Star break, I do expect us to really embrace losing to a certain extent. So I think I would keep an eye on that, guys, and just see. I do think it's going to be hard for Johnny Furphy not to have that spot, in my opinion, just because of, like I said, Rick's praise of him. He's praised Walker too, but Rick's always praised Furphy. And just considering his contract situation, I mean, just $3 million compared to 10 to 15, that's $7 million plus that you could use towards somewhere else in your roster for a 10th man. That's where it's it gets a little dicey, guys, if you get what I'm saying. So I think most of Pacer Nation could agree with that, even if you're a big Jarace Walker fan. And rightfully so. He's improved his game a lot recently. And I'm not saying that we should absolutely ship him off, but when you think of it in that complex and that in that complexity of team building and whatnot, that is something they have to consider, guys. So it's just kind of like a topic I wanted to bring up today and keep in Pacer Nation's mind. But the last thing I wanted to talk on, guys, is I think there's a center out there that is not really ever talked about in any sort of sense in the market. Maybe he's not even available, but I do think he could be had. And I think that he's a bit underrated. So I've talked about him in a past episode before, but I wanted to bring him up again, as that's Day'Ron Sharpe from the Brooklyn Nets. So he's 24 years old. He's anywhere from 6'9 to 6'11, but he's about 265. He is a big player, guys. He is a massive player inside. He's athletic, can finish lobs. He can actually guard out on the perimeter some too, which is nice. He's a good rebounder. He's actually a decent passer as well. So I think he would actually fit the system quite a bit. I really do. And I think that he would just be a nice young big to kind of grow with this team, kind of like that starting center of the future. Because if they didn't have Claxton, guys, like this, he would be starting for the Nets already. But they already paid Claxton that big money, and maybe, obviously, Sharp is a way easier gets. He's making $6 million per year. So he's on like a 2-year, $6 million per year deal right now. So if you can get a starting center of that caliber at $6 million, 24 years old, he's got a lot of untapped potential playing next to Halliburton in the pick and roll as a lob threat, as a guy that's going to keep the ball moving on the offensive end. I think he would fit in the play style that we play in. I think he's going to be able to get out and run and be versatile on defense. He's going to be able to protect the paint. He's not like the best shot blocker in the world, but he does defend the rim at a decent clip. So that's a guy that I wanted to bring into the, let me say, just the atmosphere of like centers that have been talked about. I think he's not being talked about enough as a guy that we could potentially target. And we know how the Pacers are, guys. They kind of get these deals where they're kind of under the radar at times. I don't think that we wouldn't have ever expected Neesmith to have been a player, right? I don't think anybody ever expected the Halliburton trade. Maybe that was just a special occasion, but that came out of complete nowhere. Just some of these deals that we make where it's like, it's not a deal that you would necessarily expect. So that's kind of what I expect with like a Daron Sharp trade, is like, that would be a guy like, hey, like, he's honestly, I think, pretty widely viewed as a good player throughout the NBA and the league, and I think any team that needs a center would want him. I worry about Boston trying to get in for him. If I think that he would be a good fit there too, but like, I really would love his fit with the Pacers. I think he could be had at the right price, guys. I really do. So I did put together a fake trade. So building on the fact that I do think that they are desperate to try to, maybe not desperate, it's the right word, but I do think they are looking to trade Mathurin before his restricted free agency. So I put together a package of the Pacers would receive Daron Sharp, Hayward Highsmith, who's on the last year of his deal, so he'll be an expiring deal. And then we get a future first-round pick for Benedict Mathurin, straight up. So let me explain. I know like most people will probably be like, wow, that is absolutely nothing for Mathurin. I advise you to like go check out Daron Sharp's stats and just watch him play. He's definitely a higher caliber player than what he's been able to show in Brooklyn so far. And especially in like the time whenever he was starting for the Nets, whenever Claxton's been out this year, he was highly impactful. He's a winning player when he's on the court, and the advanced numbers show that he impacts winning whenever he's on the court versus when he's off. So maybe it's not too far off, and you got to factor in the fact that they are going to have to pay Mathurin this offseason, guys. So it's not like they're getting a guy on a great deal right now that's outperforming his contracts. No, they're getting Ben Mathurin, who they may have to pay $20, $25 million plus. But I do think, obviously, the Brooklyn Nets, they have the cap space to do that. So if they wanted to like trade for Mathurin, take it, like put him into their cap space, and if they trade Michael Porter Jr. for some expirings, they're going to have more cap space to work with. But Mathurin would fit the timeline of maybe what they're trying to build with all their other young players, where he's about 23. He would fit with Igor Zhimin, Triore, some of these other guys that they have, Danny Wolf, around that age where they're like 21 to 23. Mathurin fits in that age group pretty well. So I think he's just a young scorer, a guy with all-star potential that they could kind of bring in, pay, build around a little bit, and then fill out the rest of their roster. But I think it makes a ton of sense for both sides. I really do. And when I look at it, I think the Nets are just one of the perfect places for Mathurin to go in terms of opportunity, in terms of what they could potentially want, the Nets, and what the Nets have to offer that we could want. So I did say I thought Claxton would be a good fit too before, but I almost like the Daron Sharp fit better, especially in terms of his age, 24, his contract right now, $6 million per. So if you get like a Daron Sharp, maybe you can go out there and try to sign like a backup center if you have like extra cap space to work with, and maybe get like a Vucevic or something like that on a very cheap deal. Bring him off the bench behind Daron Sharp. Then you got Jay Huff in the rotation still. It's like third string center, or maybe you just want to roll with Jay Huff as your backup center. You just have the flexibility to do so because you're not going to be paying Mathurin $20 million per year. Your starting center's only going to be making like $6 million per year. So I just thought that it's a pretty good trade. And if you get like a distant first, I put 2031 first. They have a bunch of first round picks. So any sort of extra first-round pick, that's an asset. And like I said, if you get more picks from a Jarace Walker trade in the future, let's say, that's just more assets we can build to make even a bigger splash if we ever need to like put more chips into the table. If you get what I'm saying, for a bigger name to really like compete for a title fully. But I think if you go into next season with Halliburton, Nembhard, Neesmith, Siakam, Daron Sharp starting five, I would feel pretty good about that. Now, is he like the absolute win now move? No, I don't think so, but I do think that he would help this team in like a tremendous amount of ways, and he provides more flexibility, like I said, and in terms of what else he can do at center. Like I say, you can maybe go out there and get a Vucevic for $5 million, or it just provides that sort of flexibility still. And then we have our top pick coming in, and like I said, the other bench guys. So let me know what you guys think about that, Pacer Nation. How would you feel about Daron Sharp? Always leave a like, comment, subscribe on YouTube if you would like that sort of trade package, if they need to add more. Would like to know your opinion. And like I said, I try to factor in all sides, guys. I'm trying to think of what's fair for the Nets, what's fair for us. So I'm not trying to make it so biased and like lopsided. Because I am, like I said, Mathurin is my favorite player on their team, guys. So it's not easy for me to like come to this conclusion, but I am starting to. So I'm trying to find like the positives and some of the bright spots of what we can get out of him possibly. So let me know what you guys think. And as always, if you could please leave a 5-star review on Apple Podcasts and Spotify. It really means a lot, guys. And I can't thank you enough for listening, Pacer Nation. And if you guys want, go check out the last episode with Tony East, where we talk about 3 big questions ahead of the NBA trade deadline for the Pacers. It was a really fun episode. It was awesome to get Tony on and really talk to him and get his basketball knowledge and insight since he works so closely with the team. It was a fun episode. Great guy, too. So, as always, please check out his content. I'm sure you already are already, so I probably don't even have to say. But I can't thank you enough, Pacer Nation, and I will talk to you soon.